Alright everyone, for those of you who don't know, right now my filming situation is a little messed up because I'm transitioning from Fort Gordon to Fort Campbell, and we're at Calsuit Barracks. There's not a single table in the indoors, so I had to resort to a different method. This appears to be the only table within 100 miles. There's people around, so if you hear them, sorry about that. But anyways, today's video is Dragon Syndrome, and it's going to be about how new GMs to give loot better, and a lot of us struggle with this initially. I struggle with it pretty strongly until I don't know how to break through maybe a year ago. But my first tip for giving loot is to starve the players. If you look at the classic starter set of nowadays is Lost Mine of Fendelver, and they get a ridiculous amount of gold and silver from just the beginning of it. And you know, it doesn't feel very realistic to me for them to get that much gold, especially gold. I like to make my primary currency silver because it feels more real. I would even go copper, honestly, but I haven't got that far yet in the development process. But you know, a lot of DMs tend to undervalue the impact that mundane loot can have on your game. So you know, starve them for silver and gold, make them really work for all of it. And the easiest way to determine how much you should give them is just for each enemy, roll a die, a number of die, just choose what you would like to be. For most enemies at the beginning levels 1 through 5, it's a d6. If it's a boss or something, it's gonna be like 2d12, something like that. But that's just to represent the pocket change that they have. That's how much silver they get. That's how many dollars they get. If you want to think about it, 1 silver is 1 USD, or 1 copper is 1 USD. Even better if you'd rather do it like that. So basically, that's one of the easiest ways to determine how much silver you should be getting out, and then as they rank up, obviously give them more silver. But you really want to restrict that flow pretty heavily. All right, now this next one is gonna be a little controversial. I never ever give my players their gold and silver individually because I don't trust them to be able or willing to give me a tally of how much silver they have, and I like to know exactly how much silver I've put out into the game so that I can regulate how much more I want to give. I can kind of keep control over that flow and make sure there's not too much at any given time, not too little at any given time, so that I can just kind of make sure it's a good amount of silver. And so I give all my players their silver and gold in the party pot. We call it Communism Plus. And you know, they don't like it at first, but they just gotta kind of get used to it. Now, if you had a party that really wanted to get their silver and gold individually, and you let them track that themselves, and they were able to give it to you accurately, go for it. There's no real reason it has to be in the party pot, other than my own convenience and sanity. And the next tip I would say on mundane loot is make it useful, okay? Like, if they want to be clever with their climbing pittons, and that's the wrong way to say it, it's just apparently some other way, or their rope, or their 10-foot poles, or just whatever, however they want to be creative, let them do that, because then you're allowing the items to be actually functionally useful in the game. Because why would I buy rope if I can never use it? Or would I buy caltrops if they're always just jumped over, right? I wouldn't do that. It's not fun if that happens. So you've got to allow their mundane items to be useful in the game, right? So tip number 1, restrict the flow. Tip number 2, make the items useful. And tip number 3, this kind of goes with restricting the flow, but make merchants, make them few and far between, specialize the merchants, and kind of give some quests related to them so they can develop relationships with the merchants. But the really key thing is to keep merchants and shops few and far between. You know, if they can at any given time purchase any item they need, it's not going to really give them any need to forethink about what would be good in certain situations. So that's why you want to make the shops few and far between and specialize, so that it actually has an impact where they shop at and who they shop with, right? And then the final tip I would say on giving out loot is avoiding Dragon Hoard syndrome. So, and this comes from a good place, and a lot of DMs have it, is you want all the players to feel like they're not, you don't want to feel like someone's getting favoritism or someone's being singled out against, right? So you want to give them all magic command at the same time, and I understand where that comes from, but you just gotta kind of restrict that in yourself. You gotta limit the number of magic items you give out, and you shouldn't really give out 3 at once, because that makes them less special, you know what I mean? And then the other thing is you don't want to give them too many, right? Like after an epic boss fight, you don't want to give them 100 magic items, because that makes it make each of the magic items worth a lot less, as opposed to one really good magic item, or maybe a couple, or maybe like one really good one and a few less combat powerful ones, but really generally useful ones, right? That would be good as well. But what I do to give out my magic items is I keep a tally of how many sessions there have been, and then I restrict the total number between the whole party of all magic items under that number. So if I've had 10 sessions, they can have 10 or less magic items. Now I would never have 10 magic items at session 10, but that's just to kind of keep myself in check, because I like to give magic items. It's fun, and I use it as plot devices and story drivers a lot, the magic items, but I really have to control myself with this number, and I keep it down to the number of sessions or less. Same things with the consumables. I have a second tally, same number, so 10, and then there's two groups you pull from this, I guess. 10 total magic items, and then 10 consumables. And you don't want to flood them with consumables. You want to keep the flow of that restricted as well, just in the same as silver and magic items, so that they really appreciate those. So here's what you guys do. You go down in the comments and into my Discord, which is linked below, and tell me about the ways that you like to give your loot and how you feel the best ways to give it is, art, as opposed to just gold and silver, things like that, different methods of giving them the loot. And then I want you to share and subscribe so that everyone can see this video. And a pro tip before I leave is pocket change. I've talked about it before. I talked about it in this video, but it's still a really good pro tip that I want to touch on again. Just pick a die size and a number of die per base enemy, and then one for the bosses, sub-bosses, for the dungeon. It's going to make your prep so much faster. And when they fight those enemies, you just roll all those dice, and you find some clever way of putting it out. So giant rats probably not going to be carrying silver and gold, but the dead bodies in the room with the giant rats might have silver and gold on them. So you get the value from the rats that they slew, and then you place the gold on the bodies, right? So yeah, that's a video. Goodbye, good luck, and have fun in your games.